Hanukkah's upon us. It's hard to believe Hanukkah is upon us. I mean, you look outside, you think Pesach is upon us, but it's Hanukkah, and it's here, and it's this week, and it's important to remind ourselves what Hanukkah is and what Hanukkah is not. There's nothing wrong with giving presents. I think it's important to make it fun, to make it joyful, to eat artery-clogging foods. I don't know where that came from, but whatever. I guess it's a mitzvah. Normally don't eat them, but on Hanukkah, it's a mitzvah, right? All kinds of fun things, dreidel, which is basically rabbinics gambling. I don't know how that one either made it through our tradition, teaching our kids rabbinic craps is what it is if you look in the Talmud. Whatever, these strange customs come to us, but they're not essential. What's essential to Hanukkah? Not the presents and not the dreidel game, but miracles. If you boil down Hanukkah, it all comes down to Matisyahu, his song last year, Miracle. You don't know Matisyahu? He's a Hasidic reggae rapper, one of many. He's the only one. He recently shaved his hair and his beard. I'm a trendsetter, what can I say? But he wrote a song last year called Miracle. Miracle, one of the lines is, do you believe in miracles? That's it. That's Hanukkah. Do you? Do you believe in miracles? And it's a hard thing to wrap your head around because most of us say, you know what? I don't believe in miracles. Right? We define miracles like the first definition, the first entry in Webster's dictionary, which says an extraordinary event manifesting itself, right? That's God's intervention, the divine's intervention in human affairs. And we think, right, the heavens opening, we think seas splitting, miracles, those types of miracles. The problem is, I haven't ever seen one of those kind of miracles. Maybe you have. I'd be interested to hear about it later on, not now. But most of us haven't. And then all of a sudden, miracles become hocus pocus. Miracles become something beyond what we can see in our daily lives. And that's a hard thing. That gives religion in many ways a bad rap. So many times I get into debates with so-called atheists, and they're not really atheists. They just have a hard time believing in a God that sits on high, that's been judging if you've been naughty or you've been nice. Oops, wrong religion, right? That you've been a good boy or a good girl and you ate your kosher sandwich and not the other sandwich and checklists on high. That's not God. At least that's not God from a deeper Jewish sense. What is God from a Jewish mystical perspective? It's Hanukkah. It's the God of miracles, not the seas splitting or the heavens opening, but the God of small miracles all day long. We read in our text, Malo kol haaretz kavodo, that God is everywhere. God is all places, all the time. Right? We think about Albert Einstein's words, and he intuited the Jewish mystics when he said, there's one choice in life. Either you see life as miracles or you see it as nothing, right? It's either all miracles or there are no miracles. There's really nothing in between. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov had in mind. He said the following, the great mystic, the founder of Chassidut, said, if I were to walk in the woods and I came upon a river right there when I was thirsty and I needed it most, I would say, Baruch Hashem, right? Thank God it's a miracle. The second outing, the second tiyul, the second hike, I'd see a river right when I needed to take a drink, and I'd say, coincidence, right? And by the third time, I'd say it's just part of the way it is, right? We become blasé, accustomed to miracles, to which the Baal Shem Tov says, that's a miracle, that we can stop seeing miracles. It's a miracle that we stop seeing flowers sprouting as miracles. We can't make a flower sprout. You can plant a seed, but who put the flower in the seed, right? We can see babies being born, but where does the neshama, where does that soul, that magical quality come from? Planets spinning, universe that's infinite. We stop thinking about it. We stop seeing miracles. Miracles are all around us in simple, organic ways. And that's really what we need to reclaim if we're going to have an authentic Judaism, an authentic spirituality, is seeing the day by day, the daily nuanced miracles all around us, each and every step of the way. Right? Thinking about this word ordinary, extraordinary. We just say extraordinary. What is extraordinary? Extraordinary. It's ordinary plus. Ordinary plus. Ordinary plus is a miracle from a Jewish perspective, and it's the kind of miracles that we have a chance, an opportunity to see. So this week's Torah portion is fascinating because it's a shift. This week's Torah portion, we have Joseph. Joseph, as you'll remember, is Jacob's son. Now, Jacob, his father, was a larger-than-life figure. When Jacob had a miracle, everybody knew about it, right? And we're talking about it thousands of years later. What were some of Jacob's miracles, right? He wrestles with an angel in the desert. I mean, it's just this profound moment. His name is changed, Yisrael, a man who lives with skies opening and seas splitting, and that's just who he is and what he was about. And the other one, which we read about the week before, was that ladder, that famous Jacob's ladder where angels are going up and angels are coming down, and it's this awesome, awe-inspiring moment. That's Jacob. But his son Joseph is different. His son Joseph has to try harder to be a larger-than-life personality. So he has to wear that fancy tunic, that fancy garment, right? That's how he kind of has his MO. He has to tell everybody he's larger than life, which alienates him from his brothers. And his experiences of the divine are not that large. They're not larger than life. In fact, they're organic. They're bound up in life. So we see a miracle today in this week's Torah portion, and I don't think most of us have ever stopped, slowed down, and read this text carefully. So when Joseph is a young man, he is sent out by his father Jacob to go find his brothers shepherding out in the field, right? Not just down the street, but they've been gone for months and months on end. They could be anywhere, thousands and thousands of miles to cover. There's very little chance that he's going to find them, right? Pre-cell phones, pre-GPS. Good luck. He has no idea where they are. So he's wandering in this week's Torah portion, and all of a sudden he comes across a man. This man just happens to be there at the right time, at the right place, in the right spot on the desert. And he also happened to have seen the brothers earlier, because he reports as much to Joseph. He says, I saw your brothers, and I also happened to overhear them talking about their next stop on the journey. Where were they going? To a place called Dothan. So this man sends Joseph on his journey, and that begins the process of the famous story. Because of that man, right, Joseph is then reunited with his brothers. They sell him off to slavery. He descends down into the dungeons of Egypt. He rises to power, becomes the viceroy, the second in charge of all of Egypt. He's there when there's a famine years later to receive his brothers, the Israelites, as the Jews make their way from Israel to Egypt. And they go into slavery, and then we know what happens with the real holiday of Pesach. Moses comes along. The Exodus leads these people from Egypt to Israel. And with that, forms Judaism, and out of that Christianity, out of that Islam, and then from there we have Western society. Without this man in Joseph's life at that specific moment, at that particular time, there would not have been a Joseph's reunion with his brothers. There would not be Judaism or Christianity or Islam or the Western world as we know it. This one man happened to be there? The rabbis say, I don't think so. And they start debating and speculating, who was this masked man, right? Dating myself? I remember that. Growing up, watching The Lone Ranger, right? Who was this guy? Was he an apparition, a ghost, some type of spirit? Some rabbis come down on the side of saying, yes, he was some ethereal thing that just manifested. Others say, no, he was an archangel. He was Michael or Gabriel, I can't remember which one, that God sent down from on high, said you got a job, a role to do, and every once in a while the mystics say an angel just shows up here, a malach, to shift us this way and turn us that way, and this was a malach, an angel. But other rabbis, myself included, read this as an ordinary moment that becomes extraordinary, that this is a man, this is a person in flesh and blood who was put there. His destiny, everything, billions and billions of little things led him to that moment in time because he was destined to coincide with Joseph's life. Coincide. Another word we just kind of don't think through. Coincide. A mathematical term, right? We think of coincidence as happenstance, as random. Such and such was a coincidence, and we write off these things as coincidental. But what if in geometry, if we listen to it as it's explained in geometry, it's not random, it's not happenstance. What happens when two angles hit each other? They coincide. Specifically, they have to. It's a mathematical reality. It's a truth. It's a fact. Right? Think about this word in Jung's terms, because I think that helps us understand it more. Not coincidence. Coincidence is made up by the way of co-incidence, two incidences happening, and meaningful or not. But Jung called it synchronicity. I love the word synchronicity. Jung in the 1920s coined this term because in that really symbolizes the Jewish understanding when our paths cross, that we are in sync with one another. We're in rhythm with one another, whether or not we realize it. And sometimes we're in sync because we're being used for a purpose from on high. we become, in many ways, a malach, a messenger, if you will, for ourselves, for other people, to help them down the path of their life. So I want to talk just briefly about some amazing synchronicities, famous synchronicities, because it's important. As we go into Hanukkah, we have to jumpstart the process of thinking about the miraculous. And I think there's no better way to do it than to look for real-life examples, synchronicities that abound. So here are some famous synchronicities. On July 4th, 1726, something important happened. What happened? The signing of the Declaration of Independence, right? Who wrote it? 5 authors. Thomas Jefferson was one of them. John Adams was another. They were adversaries, but they were drawn to each other. They complemented one another. John Adams was the statement. Thomas Jefferson was the writer. John Adams should have really written the Declaration, but he turned to his friend, but also kind of adversary. They struggled politically with one another, but they were bound up in each other's lives. And he appointed Jefferson to write this, probably, I would say, the most important document since the time of the Bible. Okay, that's not a coincidence, that's life. However, 50 years later, on July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson dies. Thomas Jefferson dies on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Look it up on Snopes.com. I don't make these things up, right? Fact check me if you want. He dies 50 years on the day of the most important signing since Moses scribed the Torah down. And then on that very same day, miles away from him, John Adams dies on the July 4th, 1826, right? And John Adams even intuited. He sat up in his bed. Reportedly, the last thing he said was, Thomas Jefferson lives, right? Which is another sermon for another time. But nonetheless, 2 men brought into each other's lives 50 years earlier, on that auspicious day, die on the same day, 50 years later. Reportedly, their messengers were crossed paths when they were going to go tell the other one that Thomas Jefferson died. They crossed paths. Is that a coincidence? Maybe. I look at it as a synchronicity. These men's souls were bound up within one another's lives. Here's another amazing synchronicity. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. That's right. So John Wilkes Booth had a brother. Anybody know his name? Edwin Booth. Edwin Booth was a good guy, not a bad guy, and he was ashamed of what his brother did. Edwin Booth actually was a world-renowned actor, a Shakespearean actor. And this sent him, one can imagine a sibling does one of the most horrific crimes in American history. It sent him into a deep, dark depression. He threw away his acting career. He gave it all up. He was going to basically just die a miserable wretch. However, one day he was in New York City at the subway station, and his life was forever changed. What happened in that subway station? There was a crowd of people pushed up against the subway cars, and there was hustle bustle, and somebody fell onto the tracks. A young man fell onto the tracks, and Edwin Booth was there at that moment in time. He reached down, he grabbed the young man, and saved his life. And who was that young man? Abraham Lincoln's son. Abraham Lincoln's son. Look it up. Factually true. It's there. He saved the man's son. His brother killed this man, and Edwin Booth at some level had to do tikkun, had to fix, had to right a wrong. The universe conspired. These 2 men in each other's lives, what are the odds, the statistical possibilities for him to save this young man's life? And Abraham Lincoln lived on, and Edwin Booth lived on because of this synchronicity. I have chills just saying it. And here's a true story. And if we went around the room, if we had like 60 days, we could each of us share all of these things, coincidence, synchronicity. Here's one that happened to me, and I would not be standing here as your rabbi if it did not happen. So I am one of the few people in history to apply to all 3 movements for rabbinical school, Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox. But wait, it gets better. I'm also one of the few people in history to be rejected from all 3 movements, Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox. And you think, oh my God, we gave this guy a contract, right? I eventually got into rabbinical school and passed the exams. However, it was premature. I was coming out of college. I wanted to be a motivational speaker, and then I wanted to be a rabbi, and I had no background in Judaica. My cantor here can attest to that. I wasn't ready to become a rabbi, and he always reminds me very kindly, right? And then I grew up. But before I grew up, I applied to my final rabbinical school in Los Angeles, which I actually went back to and was accepted the second time. Don't ever give up. And I was dejected. I just didn't know what else to do. I thought, you know what, I've tried 3 different places. I'm going to give it up. I was in the Denver airport with my girlfriend at the time. We were traveling back to Omaha, Nebraska to figure out what to do in our lives. And I'm in the Denver airport. My hands are in my head is in my hands like this, and I'm crying, I'm kvetching, I said to my girlfriend, I'm giving up, I'm not meant to be a rabbi. And then I get a tap on my shoulder. And who is it? I look up. It's a rabbi from growing up, Rabbi Aryeh Azrael, right, from Omaha, Nebraska, who happened to be going through the airport. One of the few people other than the cantor who I looked to as an example of Judaism, of what it could be, of what I could be. Rabbi Aryeh Azrael is standing there in the middle of the Denver airport saying, Baruch, what's the problem? All right, he said, Jason, what's the problem, right? And I told him, and he said, you have to become a rabbi, right? You're meant to become a rabbi. Go to Israel. And I went to Israel, and I found my way ultimately back to Los Angeles, but it was only because of that man at that particular place, that particular time, sending me on a different path. I know you all have examples of this. Here's another one that I love. A couple years ago, my sister lives in Denver, Colorado. She's a well-known psychic medium. Her name is Rebecca Rosen. She was going to the gym. Psychic mediums have normal lives, and she was going to work out. So she's going to the gym. However, psychic mediums are a little more in tune than the rest of us. And so she feels like, you know what, I need to go into Borders. She didn't know why. She was just passing Borders, Zichrono Livracha, may its memory be a blessing. And she's passing Borders, and she decides she has to go in. She doesn't know why. So she goes to, and then she goes in and she goes to the spirituality section. That's what psychic mediums do. And she goes to the spirituality section. She sees a man pulling down a Sylvia Browne book. Sylvia Browne is one of her contemporaries. And she says, you know, this is weird, but I'm a psychic medium. Obviously, you're pulling down a psychic book. Maybe you're open to this. He says, well, yes, I am, actually. I came to the store because I had an appointment with a psychic medium, and she had to cancel last minute because she had a radio show. So my sister said, this is kind of strange, but I just keep hearing the name Al. And the man's face turns white and says, that's what I wanted to talk to the psychic about, my father, Al. And my sister said, just let me ask you another strange question. Are you looking for something more than a book? Are you looking for money? The man said, I am looking for money. I wanted to talk to the psychic because my father did something with the family money right before he died, and my mother and I can't find it. She said, it's in the floorboards. So he goes home and sends her an email saying, thank you so much. We found thousands of dollars in the floorboards exactly where you said, right? Can't make this stuff up. And I trust my sister with every ounce of my being. Here's another one. And this is one of the most profound, and it's actually what inspired this week's talk about synchronicity. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of officiating at a funeral. And I was given permission to talk about this funeral. It was Richard and Gail Gelb's father, Harold Gelb. He died at the ripe old age of 91. He lived a good, long, meaningful life. And it's not tragic when somebody dies at 91. It's sad. It's always sad. But he lived a good life. And that's not where the story ends, right? Because when he died, his wife was right underneath him at Salem Hospital. They were 3 floors apart. They were both in the hospital at the same time. She was 90, correct? He was 91. They were 3 floors apart. And Harold dies, and then within a matter of days, while the Gelbs were still in Shiva, his wife dies, Sylvia dies, right? Where does that happen? How does that happen? I did just a little bad math, because I'm a rabbi, not a mathematician. They lived on earth for 33,000 days. 800,000 hours they were here, 48 million minutes on planet Earth, and their souls left this world within a matter of minutes, hours, a couple days, while the family was still in Shiva for their mother left the world. And that just points to me as to something beautiful. When you live a long, good life, and you're here, and you become, and you fall in love, and you get married, and you raise a family, and you're close, and your souls are bound up as beshert, as soulmates. When 2 people like that leave this world, it makes my heart sing the possibilities that we have soulmates, that our souls are on a journey together, and that it's not random, and it's not happenstance, and it's not coincidence that is a meaningless moment, but lives coincide, souls coincide, and frankly, as sad as it is, and I know the family is sad, it also, I think, gives all of us hope, right, that our souls are on journeys with one another. Let me end with a final synchronicity. Probably the most important one that I've ever heard of, other than that. That one really touched me. My father, before he died, tragically, went to actually, back up. After my father died, I went to Detroit, Michigan, where he was living, and I held a Shiva minyan for all his friends. About 100 people were there. And I didn't know these people, and we were singing, and we were praying, and this young woman comes in. Nobody knew her from Adam. She comes in, she sits down, And she says, "May I speak?" She's a little timid voice. She says, "You don't know me and I don't know you, but I knew Shelley, just briefly, my father. He used to come to a cafe where I worked. And there was one day, I didn't know him well, but there was one day where I was down and I was out. My little brother had just passed away. And I didn't know if I could go on. I didn't know if I could live. And this man came in, happened to be my father, and he was the first person all day, any day, who said, 'How are you?' and waited for an answer. And then that question turned into about a 30-minute conversation because my father knew that she was sad at some level. And she came to this Shiva Minyan of my father to say, 'I have no doubt about it, that your dad, this man, was put in my life to be there at that moment because he saved my life.'" Right? How many of us have had these experiences? How many of us have been this experience? We sit around waiting for miracles to happen, waiting for the heavens to open, waiting for the seas to split, all the while walking past those miracles around us that abound. Albert Einstein, again, there are two ways to live your life, as if everything is a miracle or as if nothing is a miracle, but the latter is not acceptable. The latter is not Jewish. The latter is not Hanukkah. Hanukkah challenges us, prods us, pushes us to rethink our ideas of miraculous, of miracles, to rethink those coincidences in our lives, when our lives coincide with another person, not as happenstance, not as accidents, but as holy divine acts. And maybe, just maybe, through a caring glance, through a kind word, through just being present, through just showing up, maybe, just maybe, you are an angel. You are a miracle in somebody else's life. So with that, we go into Hanukkah. This year, exchange presents, but exchange miraculous miracle moments, right? Give that to people. Share with one another miraculous moments now in the Kiddush luncheon and into Hanukkah. And with that, I hope we have a Hanukkah filled with miracles. Do you believe in miracles? I hope, I pray that you do.